What's poppin', everybody? This is the cartoon kid Ray Rawlins, and today I'm doing a first impressions review, reviewing episode 1 of Craig of the Creek called Itch to Explore. Now I want to give a special shout out to the homie Heist Man Da Foe from Talk That Talk Ghetto News YouTube channel for dropping this suggestion in the comments about a week ago. As per usual, man, before I start breaking this episode down, I'm finna have to give y'all that episode breakdown. This episode, or show rather, is centered around a kid named Craig and his two friends, JP and Kelsey, and their playtime adventures at their neighborhood creek. For this episode specifically though, we see Craig creating a map of the creek, marking all the fun spots that they had visited, and creating a general layout of the place. He starts to create this map at the house with his 95,000 brothers and sisters, and he can't get no alone time, so he said, you know what, man, I'm finna head down to the creek to finish up this map. So he meets his friends JP and Kelsey down at the creek, and they discover one little spot that they haven't visited, and it actually turns out that this spot is basically in a field of a bunch of poison ivy, which I believe they call like Poison Grove or something like that. So Craig and his friends decide that, yo, we're gonna be the first ones to hit this spot up and see what it's all about, because apparently none of the kids in the neighborhood have been there before. So they decide that they want to be the first to do it. So Craig and his friends get all suited up and they basically travel to this spot. Now, once they get to this spot, they basically find out it's a small little trampoline that they can all bounce and have fun on. And they meet this other kid who, I don't think they even said his name, they just called him the unscratched one or something like that, who basically is immune to poison ivy, and that's his little hiding spot to get away from his 6 brothers and sisters, and they basically become friends with this kid. And there you have it. That was a brief but somewhat extensive summary of the episode. Now, my first immediate thought of this episode was, wow, Craig's black. I'm gonna be 100% honest with y'all, man. It's been a while, at least for me personally, since I seen a black lead character in a cartoon. You got the Boondocks, you got the Cleveland Show, and I'm sure there's a lot more cartoons out there that had black leads that I'm not necessarily aware about. I'm sure there is. But me being partially black, I gotta salute any type of show that has a black lead, or even a black supporting character, but you know, black leads are gonna automatically get the thumbs up and support from me. So after I saw that, I was like, oh snap, that's cool, man. I was automatically interested in the show. But I do have to say one thing though. Craig and every single person in his family sounds like they're being voiced by white voice actors. Listen, I'm not the one to complain, you know, especially about something as mediocre as that. But it's like, oh man, these kids, they look black, but they sound white as hell. And even the dad. That's a small little nitpicky thing that I just noticed. I'm not saying it to say that, oh, they gotta sound black too or anything like that. That's just a small little thing that I noticed right off the bat. But to get to a more serious note though, this show demonstrates how a child, or how kids in general, should be spending their time. When Heist was telling me about the show, he basically said that this reminded him of his childhood and how he and his friends used to play outside. Now, when you look at how kids spend their free time today, what are they doing? They're on their cell phones. They're playing their video games. They're inside the damn house. They ain't doing shit. You look at the kids in this show. They're outside playing at the creek. Hell, they have a whole map created of the damn place. These kids have the urge for adventure. These kids want to find out what this little undiscovered spot in this field of poison ivy is, so that they can be the first ones out of their neighborhood to say that, hey, we've been here. That sense of adventure, at least I can say, isn't in most kids nowadays because of these gadgets that they have. Speaking from my own personal experience, I want to say what? Jeez, I can't keep count. 3 nieces and 1 nephew. And all of them, I kid you not, are in the house 90% of the day. And that's pre-pandemic. My little nephew, he stays logged on to Fortnite 24/7. I will give them a little credit and say I seen them go outside and play with their friends every once in a while. But most of the time, they're locked onto the video games, they're locked onto their phones, they're locked onto their tablets. You know, most kids nowadays don't have this sense of adventure like Craig, Kelsey, and JP have. And that's kind of disappointing, man. But with that all being said, let me get on to some of the high points of this episode. I will say this. The main thing that should be accomplished in the first episode of a series or the first chapter of a book or whatever is establishing your core characters. And that's what this show does well. Right off the bat, man, you see our little homie Craig working on his map. He's a cartographer. He's trying to plan out, or paint a picture rather, of what the entire creek looks like on a piece of paper. A little bit later on in the episode, we meet Kelsey and JP. Kelsey, she's this, I don't know how to describe her, man. She's this weird warrior kid or lady or whatever the hell you want to call it. She's rambunctious, I suppose would be the appropriate word. Hell, at the end of the episode, man, when they meet the little blonde kid, she pulls out a sword and basically threatens to, I guess you could say pretend kill him, because it's not a real sword, obviously. She fucking puts the sword in his face like she's gonna kill him and whatnot. So I guess the few words you can use to describe her are rambunctious warrior kid lady. And you already know, man, in every cartoon duo or trio, you gotta have the dumb person. That's who JP is. As the kids are traveling through the poison ivy patch, he gets distracted because he thinks he sees a little conch shell, and he ends up getting scratched by poison ivy. And even at the end of the episode, man, you can see him get super excited because it's dinner time. So JP obviously is a dummy of the group, but I will say this. This episode specifically is a great way to showcase all three of these kids' sense of adventure. These kids know what they're getting into, and they know, I guess you could say, what kind of trouble they can get into by traveling throughout this poison ivy. But you know what? They're so fixed on being the legendary kids of the neighborhood that they're going to do it anyway. There was even a point in the episode where Craig's standing up at the top of a tree, and he's like, there's only one way we can go check out what's in that little spot down there, and that's if we jump down. Kelsey and JP were like, I don't know about that, man. But Craig's like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna do it. And then he jumps down to find the trampoline. To me, man, that I feel is the most powerful introductory episode that this series could have. You place these three little adventurers in a storyline that could have multiple bad outcomes, and you showcase all of their willingness to be like, you know what, man? Fuck it. No matter the consequences, we're going to go through this ish, and we're going to come out on top of the entire situation. I think that's fucking awesome, man. But with all that being said, man, let's hop into the review portion of this video. As I said earlier, man, this episode alone and the series in its entirety speaks to how kids used to be, and even how kids should be nowadays. This episode in itself demonstrates the sense of adventure that every child should have at Craig's age. And anyone who's an uncle, auntie, parent, grandma, grandpa, who have kids in their family that they see on a regular basis may be aware that kids nowadays don't have that sense of adventure. Kids nowadays aren't going out and exploring their neighborhood around them or exploring the world. Kids don't have that itch to explore, pun 100% intended. And you can even argue that kids who don't have this sense of adventure do not have the ability to be creative. Look at Craig, man. He's a cartographer, a map creator. Look at Kelsey. She's, like I said, a rambunctious warrior lady. And JP, hell, he's a Patrick of the group. These three kids have their own separate identities that differentiate one from another. And I'm sure kids nowadays can still be creative, but I personally believe that these three kids' identities stem primarily from their imaginations. These kids have active imaginations, which you can arguably say that kids nowadays don't have. Think about it this way, man. If you have a nephew, like I do, who's obsessed with Fortnite and video games and whatnot, what are you really doing to cultivate your imagination? Only thing you're doing is, okay, how am I going to kill this guy over here? Or what type of skin or dance am I going to give my character? At least I think that's what Fortnite is. I honestly don't know. I don't play Fortnite. But I hope you guys get the picture. This episode served as an introductory episode to a series that primarily is centered around kids cultivating their imaginations and exploring the creek and the neighborhood around them. And this episode gave us a taste of what the entire series is going to be like in a beautiful way, I might add. So in the end, man, I'm going to have to hit this episode with a nice 7 out of 10. This episode was very enjoyable. It introduced us to the characters. It gave us a taste of what the series is going to be like. It does everything, and it meets all the criteria of what a first episode of any series should be like. If you haven't seen Craig of the Creek, man, go check it out. It's on Cartoon Network. And once again, thanks to the homie Heist Man Da Foe for recommending this show for me to check out. And with all that being said, this is the Cartoon Kid Ray Rawlins. This has been my first impressions review of Craig of the Creek Episode 1, Itch to Explore. You already know what to do, man. Tell me what you think of this episode. Drop your opinions down in the comments box below. Tell me if you liked it. Tell me if you hate it. Tell me what you would rate it. Check out any other videos here on this channel. And until next time, I love y'all, and I'll see y'all when I see ya. Peace out, everybody.